direct from the Smith Pier down here where we're trying to catch some carp. Unfortunately, things haven't seem to be happening in the area, although we do have some local hobos over across the river over here trying to see what they can possibly catch too. That's a special boy! That Danny's a special boy! Did it go off? Hey, that's the boy! Largemouth. Big largemouth. Hell yeah! Hey, what's up guys? Nick the Informative Fisherman here on behalf of Lucky Tackle Box, and today I get to introduce you guys to the Lake Lunker's Killer Crank. This is a very unique little squarebill. You know, I normally compare things to like a 1.5 size or a 2.5 size, and this comes in at 2 1/3 inches long. It says it dives 3 to 5 feet deep, but I was really getting about 6 or 7 foot on 12-pound fluorocarbon. And the really cool part is, I'm going to show you this other bait up close. I kind of modified this Killer Crank into a coffin bill where I was getting almost 8 or 9 feet out of it, and this thing is still kicking all over like a square bill. Very unique presentation, and it's got something kind of cool. They say it's their unique sound chamber. It is like a single knocker in that little square bill there. I'm under this theory, multiple rattles catches more fish, single knocker catches big fish. So let's break this bad boy down. Oh God, yeah. No! Oh, he threw it. Now, whether you got a bluegill pattern or a shad pattern, I want to veer outside the norm right here, and I really want you to think about what a squarebill's ability is. A squarebill is very audible, it's noisy, it's displacing a ton of water. It's one of those dingy or dirty water killer type of baits because it appeals to the fish's lateral line, it appeals to the fish's senses and hearing. Real noisy, real loud, kicking all over the place. So let me tell you a little something else, a little belief I have in the squarebill. I believe the squarebill imitates a fish in stress mode. Like, you know when you ever hook a bluegill taking kids out to fish, and that bluegill starts acting real erratic, and sometimes it just triggers an inactive bass to run up and grab that bluegill, though you've been fishing there all day long. My theory is a squarebill is probably one of the best baits at triggering that instinctive action out of a largemouth bass to come and eat. So if you're around shad, yeah, you could match the hatch. If you're around bluegill, you can match the hatch. If you got a craw pattern, you can match the hatch on craws. But a lot of the time, it's not necessarily about matching the hatch with the squarebill. The one thing you got to focus on with the squarebill is getting it close to that bass, getting it down in there and deflecting off of that concrete, deflecting off of the boulders, ripping it in and out of grass. You want to be near them. For a squarebill, they don't like to travel far and get it necessarily. They like it to be right there and just turn and pop, smack it. They react to it. So at all times you need to be thinking, how can I get this really close to that bass's face? You never want to be reeling too far above them. You never want to be, you know, too far outside that strike zone. You want to make repeated casts to an area and try to deflect off everything you can and pop it in and out of everything you can to score those reaction strikes off a stress mode style bait like a squarebill. So when it comes to the equipment, I'm going to throw the Killer Crank on. This is a lighter, smaller squarebill. So the heaviest line I'm going to throw it on is about 12-pound fluorocarbon. The reason I choose fluorocarbon is that sensitivity, that low stretch. I'm going to feel it when there's grass on there and I need to pop it. I also want low stretch where when I pop it, it can tear that grass free. And I also know when I'm making contact with those rocks or bumping into timber. From there, I want a medium power bait casting rod. A lot of people don't have a medium power. So what a lot of the guys do have is a medium power spinning rod. And that is also a good choice for the Killer Crank. You can bomb it out there. It's a smaller crank, it has smaller treble hooks, it's gonna hang on to them. You don't really need to wrench them with a bait caster if you don't have it. So you can throw it on that spinning rod with like 8-pound or 10-pound fluorocarbon. Like the lightest line I go on a bait caster is 10-pound fluorocarbon, and I'm able to get probably 8 or 9 feet of depth on that squarebill right there which is outstanding. There's very few square bills that can go that deep. I do like a lot of cushion in the tip of my rod. This is a Sticks hybrid cast right here. This is a very light bait caster. This is one of the lightest one in the Sticks setup, and you can really launch that killer crank out there a long ways. A fast reel isn't necessary. Anything 6 speed or up, that's 1 revolution of the handle, is 6 rotations of the spool, is going to get you by just fine. You want to remember, you don't want to wrench on them too hard with a smaller square bill like these. Take your time with them. When they get them, those smaller treble hooks are going to penetrate in there deep. Don't horse them. Take your time and land some big fish on that puppy. So when am I going to throw a bait like the killer crank? Low light conditions, early morning, later evening, overcast days are going to work well. This is going to make the fish want to run things down. Covering a lot of water, making long casts is going to work. When the water's dingy is also a great time. Dingy and slick calm, not so good. Dingy and 10+ mile-an-hour wind is really good. Even if you have clear water, go to the lee side of the lake. That's where the wind is blowing in. That's going to murky up a dirt line right there on those shallower shorelines. It's going to push plankton in there. Smaller bait fish are going to come in there and feed on it, and that's a perfect time to throw like a killer crankbait like that right up in that windier shoreline and windier bank. But with that lighter square bill, you want to keep in mind to keep that wind to your side and slightly downwind of your target, to where you want to come up and you want that wind kind of blowing into your target zone to bomb that cast out there a little bit farther. Trying to cast this lighter one into the wind, you definitely want to throw it on a spinning rod. Low light hours, windy days, dirtier water, but if it's clean water, fish the lee side of the lake where that wind is blowing into it. Targets that I'm going to throw this around: grass lines, little pockets up in the shoreline. If I'm casting shallow, I'm going to start with my rod tip high. As it moves out away from the shoreline, I'm going to lower my rod tip, trying to maintain contact with structure or cover. Like I said, if it's getting hung up in the grass, pop your rod tip up, reel. You want to be consistently getting caught in that grass, but you don't want to dredge down into it. You want to hang up, pop it, hang up, pop it. That's going to get you those reaction strikes for those bass that are hiding down there in the grass. As the sun comes up in the middle of the day, it's good to target shade lines or that grass, but normally a shade line where the sun's coming over, maybe a riprap, rocky bank. Get down there, deflect it off those rocks, because there's going to be shade pockets those fish are going to hide in. So it doesn't necessarily have to be low light hours, but you can get in areas that are going to have low light and little shade pockets, whether that's under trees, behind a grass line and the grass is creating shade for them, down in behind it, or along a rocky wall that's going to have some bigger rocks with shade pockets down in there for them to hide and ambush on a bait like that. So I wanted to show you guys something here. I hit a rock getting a little too anxious casting, and I chipped the corner. So what I did is I actually filed the corners off, which makes a coffin bill. A coffin bill's in between a round bill and a square bill crankbait. A square bill gives you a ton of erratic action, and it causes that wounded fish style reaction out of a bass, versus a round bill can dive in a lot deeper. So what this does is kind of like the best of both worlds doing a coffin bill. Once I did this on this bait with about 12 or 15 pound fluorocarbon versus stock, I was getting about an extra 1.5 feet of depth. So maybe you're fishing a pond where you want to hit the rocks that are out there a little bit deeper. With this thinner plastic on here, you can take a file and you can modify your square bill to make it run a little bit deeper and give you that coffin bill presentation, which is going to give those bass a different look in the area if your buddies are also out throwing that killer crank. So when it comes to casting a smaller square bill like this, you're going to see a lot of guys that reel up to the tip and have their crankbaits close. With a smaller square bill, you want to leave out more line. What that's going to do is when you build up for that big cast, it's going to allow the rod to flex more, therefore you'll get more range on your range of motion and your cast. So just a little flick like that. We're looking at 90+ feet of water out there. This is all grass, but if it was rock, immediately what I would do if it was rock, I'd have my rod tip down. Anytime I hit a rock, I would stop reeling, hesitate for about a half a second, reel down again until I hit another rock, hesitate, let it come up, reel down again, hit the rock, reel down again, hit the rock, pop my rod tip, pop my rod tip, hit the rock. And what that's going to do, it's going to cause a ton of erratic motion, and you're going to get those reaction strikes out of those bass that won't hit anything else but a square bill, forcing them to react. In the sake of all grass, like I have here, I'm gonna make that same cast. Let me clear that grass off that bait. I'm gonna make that same little cast out there. I'm gonna get it hung up in the grass, and then I'm gonna go pop, pop with my rod tip up, reel down, hang the grass, pop, pop, rod tip up, reel down and hang the grass. And that's that same principle. Those bass are hung up down there in the grass, hiding as the sun comes up. When the sun's down, low light, those bass are generally on top or roaming. As that sun comes up, those bass are gonna pull down in the grass. When you hang that grass, it's right there next to their head. That pop pop is gonna get them to react. They're gonna shoot out and they're gonna eat that squarebill. I'm Nick the Informative Fisherman, and that's the Lake Lunker's Killer Crank. Remember guys, if you like this video, make sure to click that subscribe button, get that little bell notification, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all the other social media channels at Lucky Tackle Box, guys. We'll see you next time, and best of fishing.